Did you know that mobile devices now handle as much as 80% of the workload in a typical office, but they are woefully unprotected? About 36.5% of organizations were impacted by mobile malware in 2020. How well protected are your company's mobile devices? We'll help you find out in today's update. Hello, I'm Michael Kinnett, CEO and founder of iTernal Networks. And every Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific, I go live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and my personal LinkedIn pages to discuss the latest in tech and cybersecurity news that might affect you and your business. At the end of my live session, I'll be answering any questions from the audience. So if you've got any business tech or cybersecurity questions, get them ready. I'll make sure to have some time to cover those at the end. But first, the news. I have two today. One of them was in the news, and one of them wasn't, and I'll explain that in a minute. First, CISA, which is the government organization that handles internet security, they ordered federal agencies to patch iPhones, to patch some vulnerabilities in iMessage that have been exploited in the wild. And now that it's been discovered, these exploits, they've actually discovered that these exploits have been attacked going back all the way back to 2019. So CISA has ordered the US government to patch the iPhones by July 14th to protect, now that Apple has released a patch for these bugs. So Kaspersky, which is a large security company out of Russia, discovered these exploits. They discovered it on the iPhones in their organization, their employees, through some monitoring, and they tracked down and figured out what was going on and published an article explaining this, what they discovered. And Apple was made aware, and Apple has since issued a patch for it. And interestingly enough, the Russian government is blaming the US government. They're saying that these exploits were done, these attacks through this exploit were done by the United States government. And they're accusing the US government of collaborating with Apple to build in this backdoor, essentially to build in the bug to allow the United States to spy on mobile devices around the world. Of course, Apple is denying that they have worked with the United States government or any others to build in backdoors to devices. I tend to agree with them. It's bad business if you're building in security breach, backdoors that others can exploit. Whether the U.S. government is using it to exploit foreign governments around the world is unknown, but that's what the Russian government is claiming. So the next thing I want to talk about was not in the news. And frequently in the news, we hear about these huge breaches, right? Or business email compromises or ransomware that affect large organizations or public organizations, right? Some of these attacks are very publicized in the media, but most of the attacks that happen, most of those that are reported through the FBI's annual report, don't go reported in the media, and this is one of them. So my brother-in-law contacted me earlier this week, and he said, hey, a friend of mine wired $3 million to his lawyer. And I immediately knew where this was going, right? Guess what? The lawyer contacted him several days later, said, hey, where's the funds? I thought you were going to send them. And they discovered that the law firm was involved in a business email compromise. And that $3 million was wired to a threat actor, which was then, they got the FBI involved, probably a little bit too late because they didn't immediately know about this compromise. But they tracked the funds as far as they could, and each step on its journey, right? It was wired to one bank, and then from there it was wired to several banks, and then from there to several more banks, and it just spiderwebbed out away from that initial transfer, and they were not able to recover any of the funds. And in investigating this, the FBI told my brother-in-law's friend that another law firm was also victimized from this threat actor for $9 million. So two law firms, one was in California. I don't know where the other one was. The FBI didn't tell my brother-in-law's friend about that. But so $12 million that this criminal, right, these threat actors got from a couple of law firms here in the United States. That's not in the media, not in the news, right? Nobody's going to hear about it. But that's going to have a large impact, right, on those law firms, on their clients. Probably their insurance is getting involved and going through any recovery process on that end. But business email compromise is a very real threat out there. And what the criminals do is they gain access through the business email and they sit on it, right? They monitor, they look for specific things, they look for stuff. And as soon as they see an opportunity, in this case, they saw an opportunity for, hey, they just sent an invoice for $3 million for this. We're going to redirect that, right? $9 million from the other law firm. So they sit on it, wait for the right opportunity, and then they inject themselves in between those communications that then appear legitimate because it's been an active communication back and forth between the law firm and their client. However, it was redirected. So it's critical that your organization has in place a process for verifying where you're wiring funds to or where you're receiving funds from, to make sure that both parties are sending it to where you think you're sending it. All right. With that being said, we'll talk more about business email compromise in the future at some point. Maybe we can do a webinar, a more deep dive on that. But it's a very, very real threat, and that's where the majority of these ransomware and other attacks, initiate, is through these business email compromises. All right. Today, our topic is related to mobile security, right? For your mobile devices. So I'm going to talk about 5 types of mobile attacks, right, that can impact you and an organization. Microsoft estimates that up to 80% of the workload in many enterprise organizations is now done via mobile devices. That could be, cell phones, tablets, right? You name it. They're taking over. Over half of all web searches are now also conducted from a mobile device rather than a desktop PC. And this has caused mobile devices to become more targeted over the past few years through these criminals, through these hackers. And as hackers realize that they're holding many of the same sensitive information on these mobile devices and app access as on PC, they've been creating mobile malware and other exploits to breach these mobile devices. So similar to the one we talked about in the news, right? This Apple breach through iMessage. So these criminals are going after these mobile devices. In 2020, Wandera found that approximately 36.5% of organizations were impacted by mobile malware. And ITNet did a separate thing, and they found that 2.5 million people unknowingly downloaded multiple mobile adware apps. So it's important that you start treating mobile devices in the same way that you do computers when it comes to your security of your organization. Smartphones and tablets need the same type of security precautions in place, including antivirus and anti-malware, DNS filtering, automated OS and app updates, managed backup. So those are some things that you can put in place to help protect. And now I'm going to talk about these 5 areas, right, of where these attacks are kind of coming from and how they impact mobile. The first one is mobile malware. So these ones are hidden in apps, and it's not easy at first glance to tell the difference between a legitimate free app and one that has malware hidden inside. Scammers will use the same types of flashy graphics. The app may even have a high star rating. Most likely they do that through suspicious means of boosting, right? Where they get all their buddies, all their criminal buddies, to go in and rate that app so that it's got 5 stars or 4.5 stars. The app might even do what it says that it will do when downloaded, right? It may say, oh, we're going to do, it's this fun game, or it's going to do this or that. It may actually do those things, but in the background, it's doing more. Malware can be hidden in the background that you never see, infecting a device as soon as the app is installed. And many of these apps will hide once on your phone or tablet by causing the icon of a common system default system app, right, like settings or calendar or something. Mobile malware can include all the same types of malware that can infect the computer: ransomware, adware, spyware, Trojans, and more. So that's probably one of the more common types of mobile threats that are out there. Number 2, unprotected communications, right? So have you ever sent somebody a password or credit card details over a text message or over a messaging app? Did you check to see if that communication was encrypted? Many users use various different methods of communication from their mobile devices without knowing how secure those methods are. If sensitive information is being transmitted via text message and it's not encrypted, then a hacker could intercept it along its path. Number 3, public Wi-Fi and man-in-the-middle attacks. So public Wi-Fi has long been known to be non-secure, yet people still use it when it's available. They want to save their mobile minutes or get a faster connection. In a study by privatewifi.com, 75% of people admit to connecting to email when on public Wi-Fi. Other activities people will do is sign into apps, even sensitive ones like online banking, shop online, enter credit card details, etc. If you're on public Wi-Fi, you are at risk of a man-in-the-middle attack. This is when a hacker connects to the same network and looks for victims with unprotected communication. They then basically, hence the name man-in-the-middle, right? They inject themselves between you and wherever you're sending that data to. They can then capture that data that you're transmitting. And the only way really to safely connect to public Wi-Fi is to use a VPN or a SASE or ZTNA app, which will encrypt all communications for all apps on that mobile device. All right, number 4, this was called juice jacking. That's kind of a fun name, right? Juice jacking on public USB charging stations. So this is a very real danger. Public USB charging stations. I'm sure you've been to the airport or different places where, you know, they've got a little table there and a little USB port that you can plug in and charge your device. If you've been traveling, it's probably a very welcome sight to run into that, right? To see that, oh man, I'm down to 10%. I'd like to have some battery to use my device on the airplane. Well, but you gotta beware, right? Hackers can infect those public USB charging ports with malware, and they can set up fake charging station in other public areas. So what happens is when you plug your USB cord to charge your device, the malware is then copying the data onto your phone or infecting it with malicious code. The USB cables are not just used for charging, they can also be used for data transmission. So it's best to avoid those public USB charging ports and charge with your power adapter. So what I do when I travel is instead of plugging into the USB plug, I have my own power adapter and I plug into the power plug next to it, and then I plug my USB into that. I know what that device is, and I know that it's trusted. You can also find online and buy a charge-only USB cord, so that essentially some of the connections are missing inside it, so it doesn't have that data transmission capability. It's only for charging. All right, the last risk for mobile that I want to talk about today is not updated devices. Approximately 40% of Android devices are running outdated operating systems that no longer get vital security updates. When your mobile device is not kept up to date, whether it's Android or iPhone or an iPad or whatever tablet you have, right? It's much easier for a hacker to use an exploit that takes advantage of the code vulnerability in the OS or one of the installed apps. The news article I talked about with Apple, right? That's a perfect example of this. If your iPhone is not patched with the latest updates, you are exposed to a vulnerability in the OS, a bug, that allows somebody to send a very specific iMessage that includes an embedded link that can infect your device, your phone or your tablet. And once it actually then goes in and deletes that iMessage, so you don't even see that it's there because of this vulnerability. That's how crazy this is, right? If somebody sends this to you, they can gain access and install malware through some of these vulnerabilities. So it's critical that you're keeping these mobile devices up to date and the apps up to date. Many companies are not paying attention to how many employees' work devices are running current operating systems, which puts their networks at higher risk of a breach. You should make sure that you're ensuring all of your apps and your OS are kept up to date, because these updates include critical security patches. I can't emphasize that enough. There are critical security patches that these software developers push out, right? They're aware of the problems, they find out about them, and they want to protect you, but you have to take the last step to install those updates. All right. With mobile devices handling so much of the computing workload these days, it's vital that you're properly protected. So if you've got any other questions about mobile security and management solutions, just, you can reach out to me or my team. We'd love to talk with you about how we can implement things to protect you from things like man-in-the-middle, right? Mobile malware and all of the things that I discussed today. We do have an upcoming webinar. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. So I didn't talk about this at the beginning, but there was an interesting headline. I read the article a couple days ago about a lawyer who is in trouble with a judge because his briefing that he filed was written solely by artificial intelligence through ChatGPT with some faulty citations and other stuff, and the judge caught it. So you got to be careful, right? How you're using AI. It can bring tremendous value to your company if implemented correctly, but in the case of this lawyer, right, it can be very detrimental if you use it inappropriately. So we're going to be talking about AI and help you understand how you can overcome potential hurdles in implementing and using AI in your organization. So that'll be in our upcoming July educational webinar. It'll be July 20th at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And we'll be discussing the current state of AI and answering questions and talking about how business can best utilize it for your needs. So we're currently working on setting up a new method of registration for that webinar. So look out for it on our social media pages. We'll be posting about that very soon. In the meantime, you can check out our past educational webinars. Last month, we talked about the top advantages of zero trust network access. If you've got any questions about what zero trust is, you can check that out. Cyber attacks are becoming more sophisticated, more frequent, putting businesses of all sizes at risk. And the consequences of a cyber attack can be devastating. But zero trust can really help protect your organization. And through continuous authentication and validation of user identity and device identity, zero trust helps to make sure that authorized users and devices are gaining access to what they need to function. We had Darren Swan from Total. He was our special guest on that to give his expertise on zero trust. We post a link in the chat to where you can go to watch that replay video. So let's see. Let me go to the comments here. I don't see any comments in our live viewers. So if any of you are watching this after the fact and do have any questions, you can always contact me via direct message. You can contact our office, email the team, or reach out to us through our website at itnet.works. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. You're having a wonderful summer so far, and we'll catch you next week.